Very good evening to one and all. This is CA Avni Vedant, the mentor for this session. It's my immense pleasure to welcome our pace setters, CA Prakash Sharma sir, Chairman Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting, and CA Preeti Savla ma'am, Vice Chairperson Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting ICAI. Our speaker for the day, CA Nagesh Pinge, and all our participants. I would like to introduce today's speaker on the topic of expectations by Audit Committee Chairman from Internal Audit, CA Nagesh Pinge. He is an expert in ethics, corporate governance, risk management, and internal audit. He is a law graduate and has also completed executive education program from the Stephen M. Ross School of Business, the University of Michigan, USA. In a career spanning 40 years, he has worked with many organizations of repute. He retired from Tata Motors as Chief Internal Audit, Risk Management and Ethics. Prior to that, he was Chief Internal Audit of Reliance Retail and JSW Steels. Mr. Pinge has also worked for ICICI Bank and its group companies in risk management, regulatory compliance, and was group at internal audit. He is an independent director on multiple boards such as Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance, Aditya Birla Finance, Hero Housing Finance, Arvind Limited, and Utkar Small Finance. He was the past president of Institute of Internal Auditors. He is a recipient of ACII awards given by the Asian Confederation of Institute of Internal Audit. He has also authored a technical guidance note on risk-based audit for banks being published by ICAI. With this brief introduction, would request the speaker sir to start with the wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you, Avni, for nicely introducing me. And I am going to take this session in a two-way. One is I'm going to make a small presentation, which I will just now get it loaded. And that is, in fact, we'll talk about what official part of the thing that I want to speak to you. But then there are a lot of things that I want to speak and that I will talk at later stage by putting just one slide, or we will decide not to put a slide at all. So we'll take a call accordingly. Just a minute. What is happening? Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me to the Institute of Chartered Accountant. It is always a pleasure to be back with my alma mater. No doubt, I have never practiced in life. I have passed my exams, but I have been associated with the Institute with many roles other than the statutory audit. I have been a part of risk management committee. I have been part of audit committee. I mean, all your internal audit standard boards, everything was there on that account. And I felt learned a lot with those interactions. I really unable to find out how many participants are here, but I will be very happy to keep some time at the end of the thing to raise any questions which you feel is necessary on that account. See, as a chair of audit committee, I am on about 7 companies where I am the chairman of audit committee. Certainly I am there in audit committees, but out of that in 7, I am the chair of audit committee. And as a chair, it gives me immense kind of responsibilities with reference to this particular part. And I think in that context, I am going to speak about my own experience. Also the experience I have done when I was on the other side as chief of internal audit, where I have run many audit committees for the company, where I was the one who was anchoring it all throughout for internal audit related matters. So we will all learn from whatever that I'm talking to you. So this is where I'm coming back. First of all, let me make a disclaimer very clearly. The opinion expressed in this session is that of mine. Very clearly, it is me individually. Then today's presentation is for knowledge sharing only and not to be treated as recommendations, because I don't want people to say, you know, Mr. Pinge has recommended these kind of things on that account. I'm just talking about what is a good practice, what people do, so that you will understand the things. Third one is, please you should remember, one size fits all solution. There is nothing like a ready-made shirt. 38 ka shirt hai, 40 ka shirt hai, to mere ko chalta hai. It is not like that. There are a lot of cuts which are required. There will be a slim cut. There will be something with a short hand, with short sleeves. There will be something with a full sleeves. A lot of things will be there. So you can't cut one size fits all kind of solution. You should remember that. And last but not least, anybody picking up any ideas and suggestions are doing it their own or her risk very clearly, because don't at later stage blame it on Mr. Pinge because Mr. Pinge was saying that on that account. So I thought I will tell you, because a lot of you people will be a part of the internal audit team. At that time, I would not like to hear from you by the audit committee members to say Nagesh Pinge aise baat kar rahe the. So I thought I will just explain that particular part. So having done that, I think I gone out of okay. So having done that, I will go to the crux of the things. And this is where I want to show you something. Do you remember anything? Have you people traveled anywhere in Switzerland? This particular chair is there. This chair is with one broken leg, and it's a giant chair with a broken leg, and stands across the street from the Palace of Nations in Geneva. So it is, this is the United Nations and everything. That is where their offices are there. You will see such a big chair. You can see the people at the ground. They are at such a small compared to that. And you will see one broken leg on that account. In organization, when you are in audit committee, there are so many people who help you out. If one of them is a weaker party, I always, when I sit in the audit committee chair, I always check whether there are four strong legs or not, because I should not fall off on that account. So this is where, as a chair of audit committee, I always wonder whether I'm sitting on a proper chair with four legs. It symbolizes, of course, this particular chair symbolizes opposition to landmines and cluster bombs, and acts as a reminder to politicians and diplomats visiting Geneva. But for me, it is a reminder saying that, these things could happen to all of us. When you are sitting on a broken chair, what happens on that account? And in that context, I must say, I will tell you, when I go to the audit committee, I always see many players there. And in fact, audit committees of late, we want to look at one dimensional risk. We don't want to look at too many things on that account. It is like, going to a cricket match where if you are shown some 20 screens, you will all get confused on that particular part. But then when you look at, let's say, Star TV, or you look at anything like NDTV 18 or something like that, when you watch the match, they keep on showing you perfectly what is needed by you on that account. So I think all of you in internal audit, when you are discussing with audit committee, we will request you to give a single view of risk-based assurance by all of you. And in that context, I must say, in the audit committee, there are too many actors in the play. Who are those actors? Actors mean the people who play their individual roles. One of them is the chief internal auditor. Yes, that is the boss of the internal audit, as we call it. He's also present in that audit committee. The second one is, in fact, it can be one person, packed into two different persons. It could be a chief compliance officer, who's very critical. It is required for regulated entities, where he will tell you what is going on in RBI, what are the new rules coming up, what is needed by SEBI, or what is needed by IRDA, and all other things that you will require it on that account. So it is necessary for you to have his presence, who will keep on talking about what the regulators want. At the same time, he will also tell you how organization is prepared and what kind of challenges are there in the organization. He will give you a compliance report, which you will look forward to green kind of marks, rather than looking at it even in an orange thing, forget red on that account. Then, of course, there is a company secretary, and he plays a very critical role to manage Companies Act and LODR. LODR is the SEBI's, listed entities rules on that account. There are so many sections in both Companies Act as well as LODR. And then quite a few things are, I'm not saying they are stark difference, but there are certainly differences on that account. So somebody will tell you Companies Act mein chalta hai, LODR mein nahi chalta hai. Somebody will say, LODR doesn't specify it, but Companies Act specifies it. So you need to be looking at all these things. So this particular actor is also available and present in the audit committee. So these are the two actors so far. And I'm showing like that, a movie where you say, who are those actors on that account. So I starting with a hero called Chief Internal Auditor, then the second actor, Chief Compliance Officer, Company Secretary. Third one is Statutory Auditor. Statutory Auditor is like, you can call him as a person who comes from outside. Aata hai, he looks at it from overall perspective and gives his view. He gives you the status as on that typical day, because he signs what is the period for P&L and the balance sheet as on that typical day. So you should know that he is not looking at the organization from a continuous kind of perspective. He's looking at a snapshot of a time. Whereas chief internal auditor looking at it as an ongoing kind of session, because for him, it doesn't matter it is on 31st March or 1st April, how that process is being carried out, they look at it. Whereas statutory auditor will be looking at a snap to find out when the closure has happened, when the books are closed. So what is the P&L for that period? So these are all points that come up on that account. So he's the third actor in this particular audit committee. So when you go for drama, as I call it, my audit committee meetings, these three actors I certainly meet. And the fourth one I meet is, of course, the CFO's office, sometimes CFO and his colleague, who is called a champion of ICFR or ICOFR, as people pronounce it in two different ways. It's nothing but internal control over financial reporting. And this is where, this particular person reports into chief financial officer, but he has to create what they call risk control metrics. He has to look at how he's looking at the accounts, how are they closing their account, what kind of journal entries they put, what kind of memorandum of changes, MOCs as we call it, entries are passed. So these are all points that they are looking out for it. So he's again another one more actor who comes in the audit committee. So these are the four actors, they come in. And last but not least is also there is somebody called chief risk officer, especially in regulated entities. And also, where it is not mandatory to have a, risk management committee, because as you know, LODR, which is the SEBI document, says for the top 1,000 companies, you require to have a special risk management committee. So for the remaining month, it is not mandatory. So when you don't have a risk management committee, don't be under that impression that there is no work for risk management related work. Then under the Companies Act, and this is where the funny part, it's applicable if LODR, then you follow LODR, also Companies Act. If it is not applicable in LODR, follow Companies Act. Companies Act makes it mandatory that then audit committee will overlook and have an oversight over that particular part. And by virtue of that chief risk officer, especially for those companies which are not on the top 1,000 in terms of market capitalization, will have to pay attention to risk management committee. So all these five actors, they come, it looks like, a Sholay movie. Dharmendra and Amitabh Bachchan, then Sanjeev Kumar, everybody is here in their own typical roles. And these too many actors in the audit committee, they come together and then, they try to give you, and I'm expecting to give them a one smooth kind of, result. And that is where you can create a Sholay, or you can create a great movie like a Sholay, when it comes to a single view kind of thing, and which is very, very critical and important from that perspective. So remember, when you are the chief internal auditor or a part of the audit committee, you are one amongst the five who gives me that kind of comfort on that account. So you are being given, I must say, 20% of my attention overall over a period of time. At the same time, I will look at chief compliance officer, I will look at company secretary, and all of you are giving the right kind of information or not is something I need to look at it to understand whether everybody is in same kind of wave on that account. And why it is important is because if all of you together cannot give me the same kind of picture, then there is some sort of a challenge, as I would like to call it. And by virtue of that, it is necessary for me to ask that person, अरे भाई क्या problem है आपको? You are not nodding head with others on that particular part, and that becomes a very important point. So audit committees have to play a very critical role of understanding the body language of these people, what kind of confidence with which they talk about, what kind of documentary evidence they talk about. For some matter, it is like a 5 channels giving 5 different kind of stories, then you have a problem. But if all 5 channels give almost the same kind of story, you feel comfortable on that account. So audit committee's role is to meet with all these people and understand how much cohesive, how much proper, or how much correct information is being given, and what kind of picture is being given to us becomes a very important point on that account. So having done that particular part, I think we have to look at what I call, expectations of the chair audit committee. In that, we require very clearly, what? We require as an audit committee member, a risk-based assurance. Now, risk-based assurance I require not only from audit committee, I mean, from the audit chief internal auditor, but I require it from all other four players on that account. So ये पांच लोग मिलके they have to give a unified kind of risk-based assurance, which is very critical. And I always look forward to this high five, as we call it, five people. They need to, put my put my high five with me. Then I'm very comfortable on that account, because this is where I get a risk-based assurance on that account. It doesn't stop there. I am also in today's life expecting a 360-degree view, because there is no point just to tell me everything is honky-dory or everything is okay, all right, nothing is wrong kind of thing. It doesn't help me, because these fly players should give an exclusive three-dimensional and 360-degree view of the entire organization and the matters of deep concern. If there are deep concerns, they should talk about it in unison, and they should all talk together on the same kind of matter. But if somebody feels, nahi, itna important nahi hai, somebody says it's very important, you start getting worried what is really the matter on that account. So it's like, as I told you, it's like how Olympics games are being seen today. You get a very seamless kind of view. So all these five players, they will have to do all these things together to see to it that they are communicating right and complete and correct message to the audit committee, which is very critical on that account. And I think it's not fair to expect this particular thing on that account. But last but not least, and this is where I always feel, coming from the Institute of Chartered Accountant, my alma mater people, I'm very proud of my being an institute member. And I'm also proud to see a lot of young, good chartered accountants working in very many organizations on that account. I must say, there is a role of a thumb. You have 5 fingers in your hand. Out of that, thumb is a very important thing, which I think you will know once you know what happened to Ashwathama. Because of that thumb, which is a very critical part, I feel thumb is an important part of that particular thing. And I want that particular chief internal auditor, who is preferably a chartered accountant, takes controlling part in this 5 actors role. So I want him to be either Sanju Kumar in that way, or I want him to be something like a Dharmendra on that particular thing, who is the winner of that particular part. So he shows a thumbs up. I feel very, very good about it, because I want to see to it that chief internal auditor takes overall control, because he's the ultimate level, ultimate line of control, as we call it. He will know what is really happening, because he looks at tier 1, tier 2, line, or rather line 1 and line 2. We will talk about it at later stage, and this is where we look at it. So please remember, risk-based assurance is necessary, 360-degree view is necessary by all these 5 players. And then role of a thumb, as I said, if a chartered accountant is giving me that assurance, दूध पे, what I can say, the sugar is there in that milk, I would like to say, and I will be very happy with that kind of scenario on that account. So these are the expectations from me, at least as far as at a global level or at the audit level and the audit committee I'm looking forward to. Now, I will say I want to just spend some time on realities of life. And you should know, for me as audit committee member, I am an independent director. I not getting appointed as a, are ye bade saab hai, aa jaiye kind of thing. They are expecting me to do a lot of value add on. They are expecting me to communicate to the board how are the controls related matters are there in the organization. Is everything working perfectly? Is audit doing its own job? Is risk is looking at risk properly? Compliance is being met or not kind of thing? How accounts are being done, where statutory auditors and CFO's office will tell me how are they really shaping up on that account. Obviously, there has to be a positive correlation between the controls and also the profitability, because if somebody tells you, we are making huge losses, but our controls are very good, ho nahi sakta hai. So there is some sort of a problem if you have a losses. So they all have to go in tandem with each other. And that's something me as a chair of audit committee and members of audit committee, all of us have to get together to see to it that when we are evaluating it, we are really looking at it brilliantly. So if lot of people are under impression, ये तो independent director को बहुत salary मिलता है, compensation मिलता है, मजा करते हैं, it is not really so, because there are no free lunches. Please remember, There were never free lunches, and they will never be any free lunches. And we will talk about it, because I always believe there are some of those things don't change over a period of time. They remain same as ever, and we will talk about it little later on that account. Second one, which is very critical on that particular part, is shouldering responsibilities. Okay, and that's what I said. Shouldering responsibilities equally is becoming a very important point. Now people will say, at an audit committee, kya hai? You will just question a management guy, and then management guy will give you answer, and then you can go and tell this to the board. No, sir, that is not the one. You have to see to it that what he says or what management response is proper, is adequate, is sufficient, it is full of proper kind of documentation and evidence, and then it also in alignment with what other people are talking about, and that's something you have to do it. So my responsibilities as an independent director are increasing enormously in audit committees. Especially there is something called related parties now going forward have to be reviewed and approved only by independent directors. So that becomes a responsibility. And though it is not formally written, but it is so that people who are independent directors or audit committee will be held firstly responsible if there is a goof up on related party. Now that becomes a very, very important kind of challenges. So you please understand, when they ask questions in your audit committee, they ask it not with an idea to check you, but also to convince that things are all okay. Things are all okay is what you have to look at it. So it becomes very, very important for his members, especially chair of audit committee, to shoulder this responsibility in no uncertain terms. And then, of course, previously, I still remember, and this is true for my case, I started being on independent director since 2016. Now, almost, you can say 8 years are over. Prior to that, I was on the board, but as a management representative. So it was a different story, because I was talking about it, and somebody who are from the other side, who are independent directors, will take a view. But here I am supposed to take a view. That is where, when I report to the board, previously there were instances even in 2016 and 17 where board will say, okay, Pinge sahab, aapne dekh liya hai na? So we are okay with that. So that's how, even in 2 minutes time or half a minute time, board will get a briefing. But those days are gone now. You require a detailed kind of report. Actually, I prepare a synopsis of this particular thing as soon as audit committee gets over. I spend at least 10 more minutes to talk about points. Number of times I prepare a small PPT or small slide, which I presented to the board also from my side. So this is a good practice. So by virtue of that, nothing less than, I would say, number of times, nothing less than 10 to 15 minutes, we discuss about what got discussed in the board audit committee, what auditors talk about, statutory auditors, what was internal auditors' view, then what kind of observations were there on that account, what is the status of compliances, then how I feel or we feel as a related party transaction, have we taken proper care or not, are they at arm's length, are they at the market price, all those things come in, and they do ask these questions in a very serious manner. So when I have to answer, I need to get these kind of answers from audit committee, and that becomes mandatory for all of us to seek that information as independent directors or as a chair of audit committee. So please remember, this is no free lunch. Absolutely forget free lunch. We don't get time to have lunch during audit committees, as I would like to call it. So no, even, you can't have even toffees and this kind of thing. You are so tense in these particular areas, which is very critical on that account. So having discussed this, now we will go to the, some challenges which all of us are going through. It's not just at your level, it is at everybody's level. And I must tell you, the change is happening, change is getting accelerated, and that has characterized the business landscape for many years and can be expected to continue. It is going to change the way we are going to look at audits. And I will talk about it, because the sort of artificial intelligence people are now using, I will not be surprised that you will only have probably little bit of human intervention. The rest of the thing will get audited by people. So I think this is what can happen over a period of time. And probably what are we discussing today, probably 5 or 7 or 10 years down the road, or it can be even earlier, people will say क्या पागल लोग थे वो ऑडिट कमिटी में कोई आता था कोई पूछता था. Abhi now everything is becoming seamless. There may not be a need for audit committees also. One never know what kind of things will happen. So accelerating changes are happening. You have to understand that you have to live in this kind of dynamic world very clearly. At the same time, on business space, there are new competitors which are coming in, new technologies are coming in, financial instruments, new kinds of things are coming in on that account. You have, these cost structures are undergoing a change. A lot of outsourcing is happening. With that, bring in lot of risk at the same time. These are some of the benefits of cost rationalization happens. Then regulations undergo a change on that account, especially when it comes to ESG related part. If those are there, they are costly kind of rectification that you have to do for the plant. It's not that easy to do it so easily on that account. Then, of course, increasingly integrated global economies are taking heavy toll. Now, for instance, just now we saw, I don't know how many of you are aware, with Bangladesh thing, whatever that is happening, India is now left with only one neighbor, and that neighbor is called Bhutan. All remaining neighbors are undergoing a lot of turmoil related challenges in their own countries, be it be Pakistan, be it be Sri Lanka, be it be Bangladesh, be it be Myanmar, and a lot of those people are right. Nepal is another example on that account. Other than this Bhutan, rest of the countries are going through a lot of big challenges. And mind you, though they are small, they are in fact spread out in such a way that somebody is in north, somebody is in west, somebody is in east, and somebody is in south. So I think what kind of situation is happening, what kind of, how I will bring, if there is let's say there is a problem of anything like this, how I will bring my materials, how I will import my materials, how I will export my materials, what will happen to people, all those kinds of things are going to be challenging time. So we are all living in a different kind of things on that account. And then other developments also, like the global ones, like ESG related thing that we are talking about. A lot of things will happen on that account. So we have to look at it. But at the same time, I always believe, and I tell this to everybody, risk management or looking at these kind of thing, you have to also look at opportunities in that particular part. So role transformation is happening. Gone are those days when you have to only defend. You have to also see to it there are great opportunities, and rightly so. You look at cricket also. I'm a cricketer, so I used to play cricket. Around that time used to have a 5 day kind of cricket test match, and you could even go to sleep for half an hour. Nothing world will not change on that account. Then came this 50 overs match. In that also, even if you miss one over, people will say ठीक है यार, oh, no problems, I will catch up little later. But now in 2020 match, even if you miss a ball, you probably don't know what will happen. So like that, this is happening across for everything on that account. And last but not is, as these developments evolve, they will open new doors for internal audit to regain its historic influence as an independent advisor to management in supporting top management goals, monitoring enterprise risk, and enhancing regulatory compliance. Remember this, I'm using these words properly. I feel internal auditor can become a leader in that pack of 5 actors as we talked about, because he's the right person people will look at as what I call as trusted kind of independent advisor, because he's truly independent. Now I'm looking like that typical deodorant story. Why I have only this particular thing? So he says that oh, वहां पे फोम नहीं आता, this a lot of things they say. But at the same time, I must say, we are truly independent. We understand business, we understand risk, we understand compliance, and we look at also everything pertaining to accounts also. So by virtue of that, internal auditor can really be the leader and mentor in these kind of things on that account, and he can take a good key role on this particular part, which is very, very important on that account. The role of I must say, just hold on. Yeah. The role of internal auditor, when I passed my exams, people used to say we are no more only a bloody hound, but we are now, a watchdog kind of things on that account. Gone are those days. Now we are not beyond, we have transformed ourselves as a human being. We are now looking, where people are looking at us as a trusted advisor. And I think you are, if you are not going to be treated as a trusted advisor, probably your survival may not be there in existence on that account. So this shifts emphasizes on the following. You have to start looking at risk come compliance based approach. Gone are those days when you're only looking at compliance related part. Now you have to also start giving in your audit report what can go wrong kind of scenarios. I still believe that there are so many people who only talk about what has gone wrong in their internal audit reports. I think now time has come for us to understand the vulnerabilities, what could go wrong kind of scenarios, what kind of product, I mean, what I can say, value improvement that you can do, what kind of automations can be recommended, and what kind of, I would say, IT enablers that you need to work on is very, very critical that you have to work on. So please remember, risk come compliance based approach is going to be the buzzword. And in the process, you are almost overtaking risk management group and compliance group in this particular aspect, because you know that you are going to review everything in a very critical kind of fashion. Second one is, of course, the advisory role. As we have said very clearly, if you are not going to be treated as a friend or a trusted advisor, then probably people will treat you like a watchdog on that account. So providing guidance, recommendations to management rather than just reporting finding. Just to tell you one example, just yesterday, I attended one of my board meetings and audit committee meetings of a company on which I am there. There were 10 audit points in that, 10 substantial points on that particular part. Out of that, only 2 points were there where there were some factual errors that had happened in those findings. Because of that, those reports had come on that account. But out of the remaining 8 ones, they were all for process improvement. They were all for digitalization. They were all for looking at how I can improve the profitability of a company, what we can look at it. So all those kinds of things were happening. And I think this is where I believe that internal audit should start looking at more like an advisory role, because it is not that you have to hire an advisor to help you out on that account. An internal auditor can step itself in that level and work on that as an advisory role, and which I feel is very, very critical. If you think about it, I think you will be able to do that very easily on that particular part. And of course, the third one, which is very, very important, is whatever you do, the strategy of the organization and your internal auditors, and internal auditing should align itself on that account. Aligning internal audit activities with organizational objectives and strategic priorities is very important, because if, let's say, tomorrow your organization is going to take a new turn, they are going to start something new activity, and if internal audit decide to leave them alone, and I'm not saying you can leave them alone from internal audit perspective, but your involvement should be there all throughout. You have to work together on that account, because people tend to think internal auditors presence should be there only when they are making reports and they are presenting it to the audit committee. It is not necessary that way. I want internal auditor like a Wi-Fi. He should be available wherever it wants, so that it can catch right kind of information, which is very critical on that account. So please understand, your strategy focus is required not only for your day-to-day business, but also for the new business. Even let's say tomorrow you're acquiring some new unit, I think the involvement of an internal auditor will be a great thing. It's not that he will create internal audit report, but he will be an integrated part of management who will go and bring his expertise there to see what is going wrong in that organization. So he's being an internal auditor can become a scrutinizer and reviewer of the internal audit matters there. He can look at what kind of audit committee minutes are done, what kind of findings are coming out. He can pick up 1 or 2 agendas to find out what is happening. So like that, strategy focused approach need to come in very clearly for that particular audit things on that account. It doesn't stop there. Next one is, and this is very, very critical, gone are those days when people were looking at sample size, we'll pick up X size. Even today, I've seen some people, internal auditor, they say we are picking up 5 sample size. And then based on that, we are saying it is representing the entire universe. Those days are gone. Now, anybody who's doing that, it is an old technology. It is like somebody's pushing the Hathgadi instead of even using a car. Forget using a right kind of BMW or Audi on that particular part. So, continuous monitoring is something which I think all of us need to look at it, which is like, exhaustively covering the entire auditable universe. The point is, it is best done at the continuous level. It may not be necessary that it is done at that point of time. It can be done at some specific period of time. It could be even after few minutes if it's related to treasury. It could be after 1 hour, or it could be at the end of the day. It could be at the end of week. It could even be at the end of month, or it could even be end of 3 months. But when you are looking at it, you are looking at it in its continuous momentum and looking at it from a right kind of perspective, and it becomes an integrated part of this continuous monitoring. And this is where people tend to confuse with concurrent audit with that particular part. Let me tell you, concurrent audit is totally different zone. It has nothing to do this with continuous monitoring. I don't want to indulge into what is the advantage or disadvantage of concurrent audit. But if you are giving me a chance personally, I feel concurrent audit is a piece that should be junked out of this internal audits, because it doesn't do any great value in any which way. The stocks, or you are looking at anything else, it is just a question of you require a separate kind of automation perspective. You have to look at it and you can do that particular part. In absence of that, today we are using it, but how long it will get used? Because there is a universal truth that anything that has intermediation will get disappear over a period of time. So continuous audit is something, monitoring is important, but concurrent audit will get a passing over a period of time. Next one, collaboration. And this is a very critical part for audit. I think I've seen some auditors behaving as if they are working in an island. They are like, their own center of excellence. They don't like to meet people. They are standalone kind of people. They keep away from that. They don't even smile to people. They don't behave like human beings. They don't behave like a normal human being. They don't smile. They don't laugh. So I think you have to get out of that typical mode, because that chip which is there on your thing to say, I am the internal auditor, has to get out. You are as good as any management representative who's representing the company and doing the job, because your job prescribes what you are supposed to be doing. That you don't do it, your chair talks about it. And that is a very important point you should remember, because I've seen so many people behaving as if they are above God. And this is where I think you should not get into that kind of mode. So collaboration is absolutely necessary. You have to work closely with management and other stakeholders to drive improvement. Please remember, when I go to the audit committees, I generally watch how internal auditor behaves with the other members, how he deals with CFO, how he deals with chief regulatory officer, how he deals with chief risk officer, how he deals with the statutory auditors. Does he know? Now people will say, what statutory auditor has to do with internal auditor? Sorry, sir. Both of them are like two hands. They will give a great support, and achhi tali bajegi when both of them get together in the right kind of cohesive manner. Otherwise, it will become a very shriek noise. So you have to work in very, very tandem with each other on this collaboration related parts. So this is a very critical thing that I want to speak on. Now, I think we are having talked about this risk assessment. We talked about, dynamic risk assessment, as we call it. It includes risk. It includes regulatory. We have to look at it. We have to look at, needs to review the same on a dynamic basis. What does that mean? And that means, you have to understand the nature and magnitude of risks that impact the organization. Don't you think it is easy to do that if you understand the business? You know the contours of business, you know what really gives you money, what really gives you the profit, what gives you the cash, where are the key critical points where, like for instance, raw material is scarce, then how are you utilizing it? If let's say market is getting tough, how are you doing it? If you have a problem of preserving it in through warehouses, how are you doing it? So you have to understand the nature and magnitude of risk. that impact the organization. So I think an auditor is not only an internal auditor, he also has to be like a businessman looking at kitna padta hai attitude, not from cash flow alone, but also from overall perspective in that regard. So kahan se import kiya jata hai, who are the vendors, what kind of prices we are doing it, how are we buying it on that account, then what kind of EOQ we are looking at it on that account, then how are we really, taking it. It's like a value chain, how are we taking it to the warehouses, how frugal we are in terms of the costing. Then we have to also spend time on our R&D, our manufacturing, if you are in that typical kind of mode. If you don't know this, if you don't visit these plants, you will never understand it. And I've seen a typical thing that happens with most of the internal auditors. They don't spend time at the plant. They are sitting in their corporate offices, trying to be with their bosses and get the information through some people who are stationed there. They may not be at your level. Are you getting right information? It's like, if you send a 12-year-old kid to get to know what is happening in your neighborhood, he will give you a different story. But if you give it to the same guy who's 25-year-old, he will give you another story. And if you are at 35 years and you are the chief of internal auditor, if you go, you will get far more better prospect of what is really happening on that account. So there is no shortcut for your visits. You have to be physically mobile. I've seen so many internal auditors only interested in sitting corporate office or otherwise taking up international assignments of audit. Beyond that, they don't visit plants. So I think you have to get out of that mode. And that's why a number of times in audit committee, I ask questions, how many times you are visiting the branches, how many times you are visiting the plants. And if I don't get right answers, I understand ये तो ऑफिस में बैठा हुआ चीफ इंटरनल ऑडिटर है, not very effective. Second one, and this is where I'm always putting in, maintaining, I think you have to, as an internal auditor, you have to maintain an attitude that includes a questioning mind. Questioning mind doesn't mean you have to show asking questions all the time. You have to be inquisitive about it. You have to find out what can go wrong kind of scenarios. If somebody gives you some information, take it at the face value. Your face should not show it all. But at the same time, in your mind, find out, does it make sense? Was it in line with last year's performance? Was it in line with probably your peers' performance? Was it okay from overall perspective? Do you think the corporate the profit that is shown or the loss that is shown, is it in consonance with that? All these kinds of things, you have to start looking at it. So your questioning mind should come in all the time. Don't take it lying low, and at the same time don't disbelieve in everybody on that particular part, which is very critical on that account. Then seeking additional evidence to make a judgment about information and statement that might be incomplete, inconsistent, false, or misleading. And this is where, the question of why, 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 till the time you get right answers, sometimes really helps you in doing that particular part. So be consistent in doing that. And please remember, as an internal auditor, you should do it with all your colleagues, but don't do it in a very negative manner. Do it positively. Try to get more information. So you will try to understand it more comprehensively, and that will help you putting up and conveying it to the audit committee in a right kind of fashion. Next one, which is very clear in life, straightforwardness and honesty helps. This is like the story of Mahatma Gandhi. Somebody asked Mahatma Gandhi's secretary, when when Mahatma Gandhi gets time to write his speeches. So at that point of time, the secretary said, he doesn't write his speeches. He says he's a straightforward and honest guy. He speaks the truth. So for speaking truth, for getting right information, you don't have to spend too much time on that account. So always audit committee, you have to believe you need to be straightforward. You need to be honest when raising concerns and also when responding and asking questions about inconsistent information. And I think time has come for us as a chief internal auditor. Even audit committee members are aware you can't be perfect. And I like somebody who says, sir, I have not looked at it. Somebody says, no, sir, this question, I have not thought of it. I enjoy somebody saying that with confidence. That means this man will learn. He will ask that question, because there is no way you will be able to answer all questions. And this is where I've seen some people, bada chada ke, when they start dreaming of it and they give you answer out of their thought process, you understand ye jhoot baat kar raha hai. The point is, as soon as you realize that he is literally weaving yarn, as I call it, so soot katta hai in absence of that, and his eyes show separate kind of thing, that he's not looking at you but answering it in a maybe like kind of answer, you start getting losing trust in that person. So being straightforward and honest is very critical on that account. And I always look at that eye to eye contact. I look at how confidently that person says, and I have no problem. Somebody says, "Sir, मैंने गलती किया. I gave you a wrong information." I love that person doing that, because that is what is really critical. A chief internal auditor has to be transparent very clearly on that account. Next one, which is very critical, is critically assessing the reliability of information is very critical, because don't take it at 100% whatever that comes your way. And I think that is true for all of us when we look at WhatsApp messages. If you get a message, even if it is forwarded separate times, we tend to take that as a gospel. It is like God's gift on that account. Nothing can go wrong. So we all forward it without any problem. So I think critically assessing the reliability of information of anything that comes your way is important. Come out with some sort of a cross references which are very critical. And if you don't do that, you will lose focus on that, and you will become what I call, forward kar, as I call it, just aya forward karo. You just do that without thinking. So critically assessing the reliability of information is very critical on that account. And last but not least, I always believe apply professional skepticism to everything, but it should not be shown on your face. And that is a very critical part that you have to understand, that if you start doing that kind of thing, it can become a bit of a problem on that particular part. So please remember, these are all dynamic risk assessment processes. Don't give up your auditing attitude, but let it not show on your face. Keep that back in your thing. Proof evidence, be transparent, seeking additional evidence. You should not be worried about asking, "Sir, I have not understood. Can you explain again? Sir, I have not understood that part. Can you explain again?" You start asking these questions. The person, if he gets irritated, that means he is not ready with the answer, which is fine. Then you should give him a time to say, "Sir, you want to look at it and come back?" So you give him an opportunity to come back on that count. So I think this is how you have to manage it, but don't take it just because it has come your way, because I will talk about it at later stage. We have a huge confirmation biases as a human being, and we will talk about it after this particular slide is over on that account. And I will tell you something which is very critical from that perspective. Now, I think I always believe we need to align with the leadership agenda, because if you are not with leader, you are not in that organization, then it is like, you are in I would say in the air if you are a fish. So in the water, you have to be in the water. Then you have to, if you are a fish, you have to be in the water very clearly on that account. So internal audit for me is an integrated part of management, is not a separate entity. Why? Because I will tell you. First is, I always believe independence is a state of mind. It is all up here. Either, I call it, either you are independent or you are in dependency with somebody else. So I think it is an attitude which all of us have. Even as even as an independent director, I can tell you, it is all up to you. If you want to be independent, you can be independent. The form really doesn't matter. It is the content, the spirit, which is very critical on that account. You have to start thinking independently, and this is where, as an independent director, you should start thinking on it. At the same time, be aware of business crisis, business challenges, and then I think there is no harm in talking about it in right kind of perspective with the, even in the audit committee, to say, "Sir, in a technical side, we should be doing this, but we couldn't do it because of we have this XYZ problems." So by virtue of that, you are taking side of management. At the same time, you are conveying it properly. So you have to work on this particular part. By virtue of that, what has happened? You have kept your independence intact on that account. So I think all of you should be worried about this, because independence is a state of mind. Don't become yes, 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 man. You should know what it is, and you should carry that with you in your heart, because your face speaks it all very clearly on that account. Number of times I've seen people saying yes, 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 at the same time they are doing like this in the head. So don't do this kind of dual thing. It will not work. Third one, and this is where I always believe, and this is my personal view, there is a famous 3 lines of defense model which Institute of Internal Auditor, which is a US-based organization, has come out with it. Previously, they were saying that, and I'm talking from 2000 onwards on that particular part. I always believed that 3 lines of defense is nothing but to put the internal audit in that third line. It is like keeping him in the jail. He's being kept away from the organization. So he's there at the last thing. You tell me, if he's being kept in that third line, what the heck he will do? What value addition he will do? I always believed that is not correct. And came last few years back, and I was a part of that committee in IIA US at that time. I insisted on that particular thing, and not only me, some other people also helped us on that account. Now they call it as the 3 lines of model. So it is, actually speaking, it's a retreat. So nice kind of retreat they have done. By virtue of that 3 lines of defense now become 3 lines of model to say, by dekh up, you can be in first line, second line, and they are also in third line kind of things on that account. So if you are asking me frankly, I am of the opinion, soon you will find everyone is talking about 3 lines of defense. And this is my statement, which I talked in 2002. I still believe a time is ripe. People will say internal auditor there should not be any lines. Abhi Saab, during Mahabharata time, we used to have Lakshman Rekha. When Lakshmana moved out of that hut, he told Sita, he drawed that particular thing on that account. In today's Wi-Fi time, if Lakshmana was there, Lakshmana would have said, I'm giving you a Wi-Fi in this area. You will be in connection with Ram and Lakshmana all the time on that account. Then she wouldn't have gone out to meet up with Ravana at all. So in today's line, it's a 3 lines of defense. You can be in any part of the world, and by virtue of that, you can continue to do what you want to do. An auditor is like a goalkeeper previously. Now, my feeling is, now you must have seen Srijas also, how he is doing on that account. He would come out and defend it on that account. So I think time has come for all internal auditors to say why I should be in 3 lines of defense. Certainly 3 line, third line is mine. But at the same time, I would like to work with first line also and second line also. Of course, when it is when regulator is there, you need to be little more wary about it. But there also, RBI doesn't, or anybody like this IRDA also, they don't officially tell you that. They are saying, if you are helping them out, do it in a different capacity, but don't put the same thing for the audit. So by virtue of that, that means you can go into the first line without affecting the your independence on that account. I guess in form and also in substance you can work on it very easily. So time is now ripe for everybody to work with 3 lines of defense for auditors, and that's what I firmly believe. Internal audit is an integrated part of the management, and I firmly believe that he is not an independent entity. He is not even a non-resident Indian equivalent in India. So he is not somebody like he's damad nahi hai. He's an integrated part of your business, and very clearly why I will tell you so. He's a part of ESOPs. He gets the same ESOPs as you people are getting it. The management gets it. Now you tell me, why should I differentiate it? Second one, he gets placed in the normal curve. After all his evaluation in that bell curve, he is put up on that account. So management eventually puts him in that. So you tell me, what are you different? You are no more different on that particular part. Third one, and this is where I always believe it's a universal truth. After the game of a chess, the king and the pawn go into the same box. So even if you say, I am the king, I am the pawn, game is over. All of them are human beings. They do the same kind of work. So I am of the opinion, independence is a state of mind. All these forms are good, but beyond that, don't get into that kind of thing to say, I will not do X, I will not do Y. I've seen so many people asking this question. And what's critical is retain your integrity, your transparency, and your objectivity. And last but not least, your independence. Independence, your state of mind. You are independent all throughout if you really decide to remain independent. Nobody can teach you about it. And last but not least, one must follow the lines of control as much as possible, because I think I'm not saying that line 3 can become like irritant to say, I will go into 1, I'll go into 2 the way I want. We should go with a purpose. We should go with an idea and keeping the management informed, because as I said, you are a part of the management. So don't go unannounced. I've seen some internal auditors say, I can go wherever I want. Why should I worry about it? That's not the one. I think you had to be a responsible internal auditor also. You can't just have the way you want to do it. हम करे सो कायदा नहीं हो सकता है. All of us have to work together on that particular part. So you must look at organizational interest, and I think you must at least keep the boss of that typical thing, maybe CEO or a CFO or somebody, you have to keep him posted saying that I am going there, but it's a going not for individual internal audit, but for the organization's interest. I will look at your interest also. And this is how you have to go about it. So this is a very critical part for your survival. You need to align with the leadership agenda. I will talk about some other points, time permitting. We'll do that particular thing. What kind of critical point people have to do for working on this alignment. Now, I think I have to talk about a lot of things, and this is where I have not prepared a presentation. So I always believe, and this is where, I will talk about something and I will then talk about why this particular slide also. I believe that survival of the fittest will remain evergreen Darwinian evolution theory. I think this is where I must say, I read one book called Same as Ever. This book is written by a person called Morgan Housel. He's the same guy who has written Psychology of Money. He says there are so many things people are asking, what will undergo change? What do you think internal audit will become? What do you think organization will remain? He says nobody asks what is not going to change at all. And in that, you can say evergreen Darwinian evolution theory will not change at all. It's the survival of the fittest. It's not the survival of the strongest, but the fittest and the smartest that will work on the things. So I think we will talk about this particular part very clearly. And after that, I will also tell you some typical tricks of the trade, which are very critical to look at it, and some of my things which I learned when I was auditor, and that will really come in handy. So I think we got Avni, how much time we have? I can take more 15 minutes. Okay, I think Avani is on mute, so it doesn't matter. I will take up the things on that account. So I think, I am now going to talk about some contrarian thoughts, which are very critical and important for all of you to really learn the basics of, how business is run, how you should behave in the business, which is very critical on that account. I have read one book called Willful Blindness. It's a good book written by a lady called Margaret Hefferman. During 2008 and 9, this Lehman Brothers, and a lot of this financial collapses took place on that account. So she was told, on many organizations which have gone berserk, you can write BBC scripts. She was a writer to BBC on that account. So she started writing on that account, and then she realized that in every collapse, the reasons were common, the findings were common, and more or less the same environment was there on that account. So if you are asking me what is the new learnings, if you are to write 2 BBC scripts, she said, I can't write 2 BBC scripts. Both mean the same. Everybody in the organization, everybody external in the organization, including the entire stakeholders, were aware something going wrong on that account. For instance, today, if I say, how many people in confidence will tell you that stock exchange will remain at this level? People are saying, wo बढ़ता जाएगा, बढ़ता जाएगा. अरे भाई, कितना बढ़ता जाएगा? There has to be some limit. Somewhere it has to stop or it has to come down, isn't it? So we are looking at it from that perspective. So we tend to look at, we ignore the obvious number of times. We don't look at fundas. We, I would say, we tend to deliberately choose to blind ourselves on that account. So today also there are people who are incrementally investing to say कुछ नहीं होएगा, वो India और अच्छा हो जाएगा, stock exchange और बढ़ेगा. For all certain that it may happen also. So after some period of some 10 years, somebody will say Nagesh Pinge कुछ बोलता था पागल जैसा, and you look, I made 8 money. But in the process, there are little bit of up and down on that account. So if somebody is putting it for the next 10 years, probably he's taking a right decision. But if you are not going to put that for only 1 year or a half a year or something like that, you could be in trouble. If you have borrowed money to put it in, you could be in further trouble on that account. So these are all important ones. So I think another example that they talked about in that is precursor to business collapses. Goody talk, clean audit reports, internal audit reports. I think I've seen some of those companies where internal audit reports are like, there is something called, what I should say, uh, high, medium, low kind of thing. And you will realize no high observations, medium one or two observation. They are also like more like, come out with a process. They don't have a process, or there are gaps which will do some automation. It's nothing great that we are talking about, but they will talk as if, they are talking something great on that account. At the end of the thing, you will realize there's nothing great has happened. Those kind of audit reports, if you get it consistently for, let's say, 3 or 4 kind of quarters, I get very, very uncomfortable on that account. How can an organization doesn't have a challenge on that account? And this is where this lady says there is a tendency amongst us to ignore the obvious. And willful blindness is like, you put a proper parda to, not to look at, or people should not look at your eyes, so you're not confident about it. So I think you should know that survival of the fittest is only of those who are confident, who are transparent, who believe in integrity, and who have the ability to take on the challenges head on rather than avoiding or circumventing it on that account. So survival of the fittest is important from that perspective. So this is one. Another one, which is also very critical, is, we, as I told you, we have, we have a typical confirmation biases because we are all human beings on that account. I think in that context, I said, generally by and large, we don't accept our own mistakes. You will rarely see somebody say, "Ha, sab, humne galti ki. We will try to improve it." I like somebody who concedes that, because in the process, he has learned that he has made a mistake, and a person who admits that he has the courage to do that particular part, I admire that kind of person. And once he says that, everything drops down, nobody talks beyond it. At best, somebody who's your smart boss will say, chalo theek hai, ye baar galti ki, ये अभी ये गलती वापस नहीं करने का है, let's create new galtis. So this is how, you can create a situation where you conveyed it all and you will learn from that particular part, so which is a very critical thing. So once again, this is again a good example that I can talk about it on that account. Then we also have a tendency to listen to only those points which are good from our perspective. And this is where in audit also number of times you give, 3 options. Something which suits the businessman, he says, ha, ye option one, number one looks good. Ye do teen chodo yaar, do teen chodo. That is how he goes about it, because he knows this is for his interest on that account. For instance, it also happens to us when we listen to the political news. If somebody who is a pro party, ruling party, and somebody who is against ruling party, we tend to look at only those channels which are suitable to us on that account. So yeah, this is a confirmation bias which comes into us. And please remember, as an internal auditor, you should know all of us are prone to this confirmation bias. And I think in that context, you must keep away from this as much as possible. You must evaluate, as I said, inquisitive, look at suspicion on everything is a very critical part to look at it. Don't believe in it. Look at other options, look at other information, by virtue of that, correlate it, and then come to your conclusion is very critical on that account. So please remember, beware of confirmation bias is very critical. Another learning that I have got is, I remember there's a guy who's a promoter of Walmart called Sam Walton. He's a big guy. In fact, all our retail business in India and internationally is run on Walmart's model number of times on that account, where people, he feels, buy, move, and sell are 3 major ones. Buy is where you buy quantity. Move is where you move it to the stores or to the warehouses, and then you sell it. He says very clearly, you make money only in buying. You don't make money in move. You can at best cost rationalize kar sakte hai, and you make losses in the, in the stores. So he says, go and try to see how much losses we can reduce every time. So what he does, he tells all his, branch managers or other store managers to visit his competitors, stores, and come back and tell us what is good they are doing. He says, don't spend time on what bad they are doing to tell me, because I don't want to listen also, because that gives me sadistic pleasure. I'm not interested in that. Give me what is good. where I can implement on that account. So I think you should also, as an auditor, when you are looking at other best practices, see to it that you are looking at it from the real perspective, which is a very critical on that account. So please remember this confirmation bias you have to change and you should be aware of it. It's not that you can't change it, but you should be aware of it and you should work sensibly on that basis on that account. And the last point that I talked about is the same as ever. This is a book written by Morgan Housel that I talk about it on that account. So, he says there are some things which remain forever in that typical way. As I said, evergreen Darwinian evolution theory will continue, which is the reality. I don't think anybody will defend that particular part. Similarly, I am of the opinion, and this is where he gives an example, and I give this example first. He says, when these smartphones were getting worked, they were getting designed, most of these camera manufacturers were aware that smartphones are coming, but they never ever thought that they will replace them on that account on one day. Because I still remember, I'm a very senior person. During my younger times, we used to carry with us cameras, which were small cameras, but they were very smart things. The Nikes, Nikons, then Agfas, all those kinds of things were there. Now today nobody does it. Everybody picks up the mobile, takes the snap, takes the selfie, and sends it immediately on that account. So things have changed so much. What has happened is these smartphones have incorporated this particular cameras into them on that account. Now I'll ask a simple question to you. Do you think internal auditor also will get captured by somebody? Artificial intelligence, can it change totally? I feel that is damn possible. Can tomorrow AI, we can come out with, we have a maker and checker kind of things on that account. Do you think a concept can come? Maker, checker, and auditor. All three of them can come together in one of these accounting package, or one comes in all these systems. People will think there is no need for audit at all, because it will get audited at the same time. So there is a maker and a checker and auditor which can come in on that account. So don't rule out these kind of possibilities. So survival of the fittest is, you have to understand the function will remain, but the form will undergo a change on that account. So I think as an internal auditor, it is important for us to understand, how can I change form? The contents will remain. How I can make it far more automatic, how I can cover entirely far more efficiently. And this is where, survival of the fittest will continue to play a critical role in your part. Please understand, this is a very critical thing that you have to understand from that perspective on that. So this is one. Now, I think, having talked about these three cases, and out of these two books, I will wholeheartedly recommend whoever can buy. They are not very expensive at all. You can just buy it in your Kindle. I love to buy my Kindle books because they are available whenever I'm traveling, wherever I am. I want to read, I'm available. They can access it every time. So you don't have to keep it at the home. Then you have to say, oh, I forgot. Unless you want to give it to your friend and forget it afterwards. Willful Blindness is the good book written by Margaret Heffernan, and another book is Same as Ever, written by Morgan Housel. Of course, Morgan Housel has also written a book few years back called Psychology of Money. That's again a great book, but this is not that context in which I'm talking today, but that's again a great book. Now, I will talk about some points, and this is where, Amni, you are there right now? I want to know how much time I have, because accordingly I got more than 30 points that I can talk about my learnings, which I can speak, but I don't think I need to do that. I will spend time as much as you want, and you can then tell me it's over on that account. Okay. One is, you have to be an eternal student. At the age of 65, I spend a lot of time reading books, reading new things, understanding new things, and I do one more thing. I do what I call reverse mentoring. At the age of 65, I got some 3 or 4 guys who are helping me out, making me educated in IT related part, in cybersecurity related part. For instance, today, my presentation has been helped by somebody who is a part of audit committee in one of the companies where I just took his help on a voluntary basis. He was very happy to do that particular part. So, by virtue of that, you can learn what you can't learn. You can get it outsourced with a nice kind of way of doing it. So this is one you should do. Another one, you need to continuously sharpen your skill sets. What is relevant and what got you job will not keep you going till the time you learn something new. So I think all the time add on some certificates, some skill sets, some knowledge which will help you on that account. Today in life, so many things are happening. Companies Act has undergone a change. New acts like Indian Criminal Code and all the things have gone with that Nyaya Sanhita and all other things. New laws have come. You should know what is really happening. Third one, GST has undergone a change totally. Income tax, new rules are coming up on that account. So you will say, I'm as an internal auditor, what I have to do? No, you can learn a lot in this particular process. It doesn't stop there. Cyber security, data, DPDP Act, lot of cyber security, then information, data security related points come in. Then vulnerabilities around, this VAPT, how to do all those things you have to learn on that account. So you must have that ability to learn on that account. And in that, one good exercise, good advice, which my boss always gives it to me. His name is Mr. KV Kamath. He's my first job boss. He always says it is very easy to learn first time, but when you have to relearn, unless and until you unlearn, you will never relearn on that account. So this is where that again that what I call confirmation bias comes in. I know it all. अरे मैं किया है, ऐसा नहीं होता है. You read it the next time around, you will get a different meaning out of it. There are some typical books where I mean, that's one of the books I always see. There is some book called Paranoids Only Survive. I think this is a great book. You read after 2 years and after 3 years, you get a different meaning out of it because a lot of things have happened to you in life. You then appreciate it in a different kind of perspective. So there is a lot of, unlearning is very difficult, and that's something you have to grab it. And in life, I've seen lot of time internal auditor tells you confidently, सब वो 2 बरस पहले किया था, कुछ मिला नहीं था. अरे boss, when I'm telling you something to do, I'm doing it with some purpose. But if he tells me वो 2 बरस पहले किया था, get very damn cut off with that kind of attitude on that account. So don't do that. Learn, unlearn, relearn is very critical on that account. Third one, which is very critical, is as an internal auditor, this is a live example I can talk about. Very rarely you will see an internal auditor at low level becoming chief of internal auditor. Invariably, somebody from external source will come in as your boss on that account. So if you are in that lower level, you must know that after a specific period of time, you must move out, know the business to get into business. If you don't do it, you will get stagnated on that account. So you can be an exception, but I think that exception is rarely एक आदमी को लॉटरी लगती है, 99 को नहीं लगती है. So you should know this particular thing very clearly, that you have to be an auditor, enter at senior level, and then your movement becomes very easy. At lower level, to come up to that level becomes very difficult on that account. These are all realities of life. It might undergo change over a period of time. So I thought I will tell you that particular thing. So you believe in churn in the team. Churn in the team is like, you are donating blood, which is good because you get the fresh blood inside. The body is considered is very healthy after that particular part. So you do this particular thing, which also helps in a way bell curve management very nicely. Good people will go out, as a good people. Sometimes bad people can be replaced somewhere where their competency comes in, and you can get a fresh pair of people. You can train them on that account. So this is something you have to learn on that account. Another thing that I will talk about is don't become very heavy, very big in organization. An auditor, I've seen some people saying, "Arey, mere paas 250 log hai, internal auditor." I feel it is like, you are literally like an elephant. You can't make elephant dance on that account. So I believe you have to remain lean, mean, and hungry, because that helps you in making right changes, adapting new technologies, and picking new trends. Because otherwise you become so big, it's very difficult for you to change. And I think this is where a lot of MNCs, which are overseas kind of international one, they give you a lot of times old reviews, which probably the India has discarded it 2 years back as well. So you have to understand some of the things because they are big that happens on that account. Another one which I will talk very clearly is, if you don't know the business, you will never be a good internal auditor. And that knowing business is not that they are manufacturing X, they are manufacturing Y. You should know what are their challenges, what are their tough things, how are they procuring it, how are they making it, how are they looking at R&D, how are they looking at storing it, how are they marketing it, how are they do it. And internal audit is a great I would say platform on which you can really learn this very easily on that account. I think this is a great thing, and this is where I love that Unilever performance approach. This is a CEO in Unilever will invariably is the one who has spent at least 1 to 2 years in the internal audit department. The sooner you do, it is a dual purpose because you are working at a lower level. He knows I don't want to become a chief internal auditor. He wants to become a CFO rather than becoming a chief internal auditor. Then he learns everything at that point of time and go. So please, for internal auditors, let me tell you, there are two sets of people who are senior, they are in different league, people at junior, they are at different league. Learn, unlearn, relearn, learn the internal audit, become a representative of that, because these are the control things which will really help you, and you will grow in the other departments very clearly. That's what I will talk about it on that account. Have a great rapport with the business is what I talked about on that account. So in that, it's not just with your other bosses who are running the business. I always say annadata sukhi bhava. So your annadata is your main business guy who gives you contribution to your bottom line. You have to keep him happy. At the same time, you have to see to it that he's also healthy on that account. So you give him right kind of medicines, and this is audit is like that. He gives you medicine also. So having great rapport in the business, some of the things that you have to look at it is, are you on top recall list of a CEO? If let's say CEO has a problem, does he pick up a call on you to say, "Arey yaar, Nagesh, I have a problem in this particular territory. What do you think must have happened? Can you send a person?" So you should be happy picking up that call, because that means he remembers you firstly and foremostly. And that is where when COVID came in, lot of internal auditors, there were two kinds of internal auditor. People had forgotten them. They were not really relevant. But a lot of people were said, hey, let's take advantage of internal auditors, find out how they can help us out on that account. So like that, you can be great kind of rapport will really help you on that account. And one more thing that you have to look at it, are they inviting you to their celebrations? Are they inviting you to their offsite? That means you are on right books with them, because in the celebration and offsite, they consider you as a part of their contribution. That's a good mark for you on that account. If they don't, try to see how you can get invited so that you become a part of that particular thing. Don't forget another stakeholders like compliance, risk, statutory auditors, CFOs of. We said ना ये 5 लोग है, तो आप खाली एक thumb है, तो बाकी के 4 लोग भी जरूरी है. And by virtue of that, ये बंद मुट्ठी can really do a good job of a controller's function, which is very critical on that account. So you have to work on this particular thing very clearly on that account. Then another one which I call very clearly is soft skills are very critical. Soft skill is nothing but putting the things correctly without annoying people, and you can become a very effective thing on that particular part. Just hold on. Yeah. So you have to realize soft skills are very critical on that account. जोर का धक्का धीरे से लगे is something you can do very comfortably. So you can do that in a very nice fashion. By virtue of that, you create a right kind of situation on that account. And in that, I always believe most of the internal auditors are very high on intelligent quotient, IQ. But I think they need to also upgrade themselves on something called EQ, which is the emotional quadrant, emotional quotient, which is very critical. Emotional quotient is nothing but to understand what the other party needs. Can I create a win-win situation for it without compromising my values and my independence? And I think if you start thinking, eventually you come to a solution. And this is what I call a art of negotiation, where you create a win-win situation without compromising your values, without compromising your integrity. If you decide I will work something, it happens. Sometimes you drop 1 or 2 points which are important. which are not critical, but they are important. You work on that because eventually organization wants a betterment of the organization. It's not that they want to catch a wrong things happening. There is a tendency amongst internal auditors say, can I give wrong things to the audit committee? Boss, nobody's interested in that. If all of you are working together and giving us great performance, I don't think internal audit or audit committee will really question you in a very different manner on that account. They're very happy. All of them are working together. We are making so much of EBITDA, so much of profit. People will be very happy on that account. Another point which I'm saying is at no point of time take a decision which is where you are making compromises on integrity and ethics. I think whatever you may say, whether it is personal or corporate, this cannot be compromised at all cost. And I think we as a chartered accountants have that additional responsibility towards that particular part. Another one is zero tolerance towards legal compliance. So whatever you are suggesting, whatever that is illegal cannot be recommended at all. And I think you don't even have to suggest what you can do. I've seen some internal auditors saying, I told my boss, yes, we don't have to show it somewhere else, we can show it and all of things. That is illegal. You don't have to recommend that very clearly on that account. And I think we talked about it. Create trust. Absence of trust will complicate relations with all of them. So that trust creation is a two-way street. It is never a one-way street on that account. So you are transparent, you are correct, you are giving legal opinion, and you are being very soft. Everybody will be happy to accept your things on that account, on that particular part. Hello? नहीं साहब मेरा ये खत्म हो गया. I am now talking about it in a words because I don't want to go and record those points. That's why I'm not writing. So tricks of the trade or survive or rather thrive in the audit committee. I am talking orally. I don't want to go on record there. That is the reason. Okay. Yeah. So I think I will stop sharing this so that there is no problem on that account. Okay. So that is one. Then enabling technology as a key resource is very, very important. Today, everybody is digitalizing the entire platform. All departments are working on a digitalized basis. There is a huge kind of softwares which are available, lot of apps which are available on that account. I think we have to ask our questions to ourselves first. Is our internal auditor digitalized fully? Is our audit happening on a digitalized basis? Is my data getting digitalized? These are all important points you have to start thinking. If you are not doing it, you are not too late, but I think you better get going on that account. So this is a very critical part, which is important because after that, you have to get going with artificial intelligence, then how to access data lakes, which is very critical because data lakes, most of the organization, they sit with huge amount of things. By virtue of that, you can fish around what you want to do without bothering the business people. So I think now time has come for all of us to work on that kind of automation where you can extract data without asking anybody, but you are asking right kind of thing. You are making good use of it for your own betterment and then come out with the things. I've seen in one of the organizations, somebody started using CAT analysis where he's going on his own. He's taking some 2 or 3 reviews in a quarter. He does it without telling what he will do. He will just talk about, I will look at customer satisfaction related part, or somewhere he will say, I'm looking at procurement efficiency. He gives a topic, but he doesn't say what he will do. And then he gives a right kind of catchy summary of that. That is again a good initiative. You people can start doing it, which is very critical from that perspective. So work on that particular thing. Another one is you are not good unless you are validated by somebody. So there is something called external quality assessments, which is mandatory for all of us to work on it. And what happens is number of times chief internal auditor should initiate it rather than audit committee doing it. Because if audit committee does it, it means they want to do it. So you must do that at periodic interval without audit committee asking for it. And you show them that how good is your organization. That will really help. And mind you, number of times, if your requirement for additional staff or resources not happening, this kind of reports will help you getting you that particular thing, which is very critical on that account. So this is again one more thing I will recommend. And EQA is something way to go. It is like a peer review of statutory audit, which is mandatory on that account. You need to firm up your outsource policy. Outsourcing is an integrated part, but you can't pass on the responsibility. I've seen so many auditors talking cheaply. As wo sab outsource kiya hai na, we are given it to X agency, Y agency. They are good people, sir. That is what they will sue. It doesn't help. You are responsible for it. So you better do that particular work on that account. So outsource whatever that you can't do because it's a high technology area, or otherwise you can do it in such a way that others can do it cheaply than you. Then only you do that outsourcing very clearly on that account. Another example I can talk about it as for the audit, you should know your cost, per audit cost, per day cost, per person cost, outsourcing cost. Do your cost savings exercises. So what you were costing you last year, are you reducing it in any which way is an important point. At least as an audit committee member, I ask, how efficient are you? Show me your efficiency index of that. So how much money you are spending, how much value you are getting, you have to do that kind of exercise. And number of times I tell them how much cost you have saved, how much you have protected your company's affairs, I mean assets. Those kind of examples, if you can give, you give a balance sheet of your findings, that will really come in handy to show your performance. And number of times I make that as a part of KPIs in one or two agencies, where the internal auditor says what all he has done, how he has saved money for the company. So that comes in very handy on that account. Another one is your audit reporting, and which is very clearly, remember, and I'm making it very easy. Your crisp audit report should be crisp as kanda bhajia, as I call it, with a hot cup of tea. I think you should know they have to be crisp, they have to be tangy, they have to be hot. That is the only way your kanda bhajia you will be enjoyed. Similarly, your audit report should be like that. It should be crisp, short and sweet. Tangy means that has to have a substantial material, and it has to be hot. Hot means it has to be done as latest as possible. Because if today, in the month of August, if you are going to give me affairs of March, it's too late. I would much rather have it for the month of June end, if not July end. And by virtue of that, you will become far more interesting to read. People will be happy to read that particular thing. So I think you should also use right pictures, right graphs, sharp reports, which is very critical. And please remember, whatever you are putting it, you need to have a documentary evidence. I've seen some people say, yeah, my sales manager told me. Boss, by telling him, it doesn't matter. Do you have a documentary evidence? Otherwise, don't put it on record, and which is a very critical part that I want to speak about it on that account. Another one, which internationally happens, people are taking budget not only from audit committee alone or from management, they also take it from the business. And number of times business and internal audit do joint audits together. I think this is a good practice to do, and I will recommend this to all of them, because as I told you, all of you are together, part of the same team. There is nothing like independent. There is nothing like a third line of defense. You are very much, you stay in third line, but you are working all over. And this is what I wholeheartedly recommend from that perspective. Do your thing, buy your budget from the business, because then you are doing the work which is jointly required, and everybody pays attention to that very clearly on that account. Another one, encourage and introduce new initiatives. I think this is where there are a lot of pockets of excellence you can create. Something like on fraud management, on interview skills for the fraud related part, forensic audit as we call it, data protection, because DPDP Act is coming in, how I can protect it. So a lot of people have already started working on those gap analysis to see what we can do about it. Cyber security is an important point. So like that, you can work on a lot of those things. So people will start asking you what, internal audit is aware of it. And that's the way it should go about it on that account. Otherwise, you become more like when somebody asks you to do and you do it, then it becomes a problem. Because in audit committee, I've seen two kinds of people. I learn a lot from other companies because they already started doing it. Then I ask the other companies, then they say, yeah, we are going to work on it. So I know ye alsi log hai, ye achhe log hai. So we have to also see to it that you are not treated like alsi people, the lazy people, which is important from your perspective on that account. Then of course, interaction with audit committee. Gone are those days when people were saying, I only 5 minutes, you tell me what it is. Now, most of the audit committees take half an hour or 45 minutes or even 1 hour for detailed discussion. So today, that is your time. you can really see what best you can do, how you can communicate efficiently. It is like your own, you are creating your 30 minutes or 40 minutes of documentary, your own thing, which is the right kind of thing. You can work, you can make it catchy, you can make it do the things. I think you have to spend time to see how I can make it catchy, how I can make it readable, which is very critical on that account. New practice, which is all of them are doing it, at least I am doing it, and most of the people are doing it. I insist on a pre-audit committee where I get to know everything, because I believe as a chairman of audit committee, I want to be control of agenda. I must know what is getting discussed. So all points I discuss ahead of that audit committee so that I know how to handle that particular thing. Additionally, all of us as an audit committee member, we meet one-on-one. That means in camera meeting, as we call it. That means one-on-one, nobody else is there. We meet up with the audit committee as a chief internal auditor. That is your time. It is like, you are sitting in a Balaji temple, you are alone. So you can talk whatever you want to do. People are in listening mode, and this is the best time you have to do. Don't get negative there, get positive. And this is where I always believe, rather than what has gone wrong or what is wrong, suggest to them what can be done better for yourself. I think people love that idea, that how I can improve it rather than what I can correct it, because correction becomes a difficult thing and it has a cost, which is a negative cost. So try to work on that very clearly, and that will work very well on that account. Invite auditees. Auditees mean the people to whom you audit. You call them to the audit committee, which is very critical from your perspective, because by virtue of that, you are giving them also a caution to say, it's not only me who make inquiry, it's the audit committee members who are asking it, and they all start taking that very seriously. And at the same time, don't write auditee comments by you. That is what most of the people do. So by virtue of that, you are pampering them and they don't take internal audit seriously. So you insist that they have to write it. And number of times, unko maar khane ka acha hai in presence of audit committee. So they also start getting and realizing the importance of that particular thing, which is very critical. Another one which I say is, you invite your one downs to the audit committee. Of course, take permission from audit committee and chair of audit committee, especially for that, because it also gives a confidence to your people that their work, how it is represented to the audit committee. You will learn a lot. They will also become more sensible and important, which is very critical on that account. And then, you can invite, I believe, I in fact take pity on those people who are doing outsource audit for these internal auditors. They prepare report, internal auditor aapka wo looks at it, it doesn't look at it, you don't know. You get your money, you are happy and you go with it. According to me, I think that kind of work is a useless work. Don't do that. According to me, chief of internal auditor should look at all the reports, close it. He should meet with these people, and if preferably for some critical kind of outsource audits, take them to the audit committee, because then they become far more sensible and responsible, and that really helps also. It gives also a great feeling to audit committee to say it's not only my audit committee auditors team is there, but also outsource people who are doing it. And I think that's a good practice to have it on that account. Then of course, another one is you have to create a brand of internal audit. Internal audit should be treated like a brand. How people look at, organization as a brand, how people create marketing as a brand. You have to do that particular thing. So what all you have done better, what kind of elevator speech you can give it to people, what you have done. If you can summarize it in 5 months, like for instance, if your employees can say, last year we completed X audits, we saved so much of money, we did XYZ. If you can give that kind of template to people, all your auditors will start talking in the organization. By virtue of that, people will also know the importance of that. So this is brand creation is very critical. There are a lot of thoughts on that, but I don't think time is there right now to talk about it on that account. Additionally, you create a survey, because what happens is number of times your auditees, as and when audit is done, they give you a great marks. But after, if you do that once in a year kind of thing over a period of time, that auditee has forgotten what you have done for him in the last 9 months. So by virtue of that, he is not too much concerned on that account. So your surveys or your completion of that, you must insist on those audit surveys, and that surveys you should show, because once the guy recognizes you as a great auditor, after 9 months, he can't say you're not done a good job. So that also protects you to some extent on that particular part, which is very critical on that account. And now I will talk about last point. Don't ignore your subsidiaries, which is very important, especially your wholly owned subsidiaries, because you are internal auditing or showing the management assurance on the consolidated events, consolidated companies. So console review is what you are looking at it. So your audit should be across the subsidiaries on that account. And I think there is a huge tendency amongst people to ignore the subsidiaries thing. Even at audit committee, I don't forget that, because according to me, subsidiaries and consolidated things are very much critical on that. So these are all points. I thought I will just share it with you people. And with that, I will hand it over to the people, because I've completed my job. Anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free, but I really don't know how to take these calls. This thing, if somebody can, coordinate that, I'll be happy to answer those things. So over to you people. Thank you.
Thanks, Nagesh. Anyone has any question and answer related to the topic that has been discussed? This is the question and answer session. If anyone has anything related to the internal audit and management accounting query, can come up and ask the question. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to give a vote of thanks to Nagesh Pinch for taking his precious time out for all of us and guiding us on this topic of Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting. It was a lovely session performed by Mr. Nagesh, and it was great coming on a platform together with providing such an empowering knowledge to all of us and guiding us throughout the session. Thank you, Mr. Pinch.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Yeah. Anyone has any question left? What?
Yeah, it's over.
Okay, it's over.